Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to the Straight Pad podcast with your show host Asad Patil and with our guest tonight, Farhan Ahmed Sahab. Assalamu alaikum, Farhan. How are you?
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. What's going on? What's going on?
Wait, you didn't do your intro.
Yeah, I don't know. Something got messed up in the settings, so I was like, let's just get started. I'm not gonna,
Oh,
waste any time on that. I know we wait for the video to play and then we start, but
yeah,
alhamdulillah.
yeah.
But how are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good, man. Just
That's good.
relaxed.
Alhamdulillah. That's good. That's
How
good.
are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm well. I'm well. Just planning for a sort of a big night tomorrow night. We have our annual quiz night. We do it on the 31st of October. I was actually one of the ulama who I know, one of the scholars I know. He was sharing some messages that the ulama are discussing, and they were having a discussion about Halloween and Halloween and things like that, and how to term it properly and stuff like that. And it's just it was an interesting discussion, and obviously this plays into the sort of communication side of when people get married. This also plays into that, also plays into community communication, but also plays into the family communication side of things. And this is obviously something uh, I was going to discuss later, but I guess tonight is the right time to discuss it at the same time. um, our topic was going to be communication. Now, what I'll probably talk about tonight, because the night is right, like I said, is communication between spouses on how to address topics like this: Halloween, Christmas, Easter, how to raise the kids, and stuff like that. You want to start off on that and give us an idea of what the topic looks like?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, these are topics that should be discussed before marriage, right? They shouldn't be People shouldn't wait to have these discussions after marriage, right? You should know how a person views Halloween, Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, all of these holidays beforehand. So that's number one. Number two, we have to understand that we are Muslims at the end
Yeah,
of the day, and what is the Islamic stance on all of these holidays, right? So if we do not know, then we should definitely ask the scholar, and we should not just take in what we feel like should be the answer, right? We just should not just do things based upon feelings. A lot of these holidays have religious connotations behind it, and like Christmas, right? It's They celebrate it as the birth of Isa alayhi salam. And Easter, it has a religious connotation behind it as well. Even Halloween, if you really look at it, the historical aspect, it does have a religious connotation behind it as well. So these are things that we should, as a Muslim, know that okay, what's permissible, what's not permissible, and why are we celebrating it? I mean, Alhamdulillah, we have Eid. We have two Eids that we can go all out. We could have a lot of fun that we could make very joyous. So why is it that we need to follow what people are doing, right? So that's another aspect. So that's point number two. Number three is that okay, now that a couple is married, what are we going to do on these days? And I think this is where communication is going to be very important because a lot of massages are understanding that we need to have some kind of alternative program, so kids don't feel left out. W- they don't indulge in these kind of activities. So now, as couples, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to take them to the masajid? Are we going to, keep them distracted? What are we going to do as parents, and how are we going to explain this to our children that why it is not correct? So as long as the parents are on the same page, then the children themselves, they feel and they understand that this is something that's wrong and should not be done. And what I always tell parents is that the children are will follow whatever you do. Alhamdulillah, my children never celebrated any of these things. And, they feel like there's no need to celebrate that because we do a lot of extracurricular activities anyways, and they understand that, okay, this is not something that's permissible in Islam. So as long as we're doing our jobs as parents, then the children, they will follow and they will understand that this is something that should not be done as well.
Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. So this is what we're doing in our community at our masjid. Um, the masjid I'm the imam at. I'm sort of do the community programs. We're doing this tomorrow night. This is
Yeah,
trivia night. Come test your Islamic knowledge. It's like 50 to 60 questions. We do Kahoot. People come with their phones. We give them Wi-Fi access. We have pizza. We have chips, drinks, cookies, candies, stuff like that. We usually end up with like 200, 250 people.
mashallah.
you know
That's really
Last year,
good.
I think 2 years ago we had about 200 people. Last year we had 200. Right now, the night before, we already have 200 people registered. We're probably going to end up with close to like 300 people, I'm pretty sure. And it's a good opportunity to I guess keep our kids off of the streets, because that's where you generally end up going trick-or-treating.
Yeah. You know, when they usually say keep the kids off the streets, they mean something else.
Yeah, I know they mean something else, but in essence, like, we're gonna keep them away from going trick or treating, dressing up as hobgoblins, things like that. We're gonna keep them in a good environment. There's gonna be a break for Aisha. We usually have like a small reminder. We'll place some nasheeds, stuff like that. Just keep the kids in a good Islamic environment. We'll make a dua. Like last year, we made dua for Palestine. So we always try to sort of keep it very Islamic. A lot of the parents, they bring their kids. They're really excited about it.
Of course.
It's
I mean,
just
when there's a lot of children your age and other people, and you see um, all these kids and the community coming together, you feel more excited about it. And that's really good what, mashallah, you guys are doing. And all the other masajids, I mean, should also follow, right?
Yeah. So I mean, from a masjid perspective, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, we shouldn't really worry about these things. This is not from Islam. I'm like, but we also have to offer some sort of place filler or some sort of alternative. We can't just be like under this imagination that just because Muslims aren't supposed to celebrate Halloween, that they won't. And if we just think that that's how it's gonna be, we're sadly mistaken.
No, 100%. I agree with you.
Oh, hold up. Oh, I'm still here. My camera's acting, spazzing
Yeah.
out. It's fine.
Your camera's getting ready for Halloween.
Yeah, my camera's getting ready for Halloween. No, it wasn't focusing, so I was like, let me get the focus right. Um, okay, so now people, before they decide to have kids, they need to have a discussion about how they're going to raise the kids, or even before they get married.
Yes, I mean, that's something that we discuss in the premarital process, right? We ask them, okay, how do you want to raise your kids?
Mm,
What are like when it comes to disciplining them, do you believe in hitting? Do you believe in, different alternative methods of discipline, right? We talk to them about private school, public school, whether they want to homeschool. So these are all different things that people, adults need to discuss. Even like, what's the timeline for wanting to have children?
mm,
Do you want to have children in the first year of marriage? Do you want to wait a couple of years? You know, and then the other question that comes up, if you want to wait, okay, what about contraceptions? How do you feel about that? Because if you don't talk about this topic, then you might end up with the child 9 months later. I
yeah.
know people that has happened to, and they were not ready for children. And if you're not
Mm,
ready to be a parent, then what's going to happen is that you're not going to be happy, your spouse is not going to be happy, and you're not going to treat the child properly,
mm, mm,
right? And this is why you see a lot of times people, I mean, I know it's doesn't maybe happen with Muslims as often, but I do believe, may Allah protect us from this, is going to happen maybe in the future, because we follow the non-Muslim trend, is where people, they have children and they give it up for adoption,
mm.
right? They're not ready for the child, nor do they want the child, and they just want to, they give it up for
You wanna
adoption, or
you
they,
wanna know you wanna know a perfect example of that?
okay, yeah, tell me.
Steve Jobs.
Perfect example right there. Steve Jobs, right?
Steve Jobs,
Hi-
Muslim father,
Yeah, yep.
Arab Muslim father, and his father is a multimillionaire as well. His father's not poor either,
Okay, I
and
didn't know that part, but yeah,
well,
wow.
his father is a. I don't want to go too much into this, but his father's like a casino millionaire in Las Vegas. So um, not Stuff happens. But
Yeah.
but anyway, like people will give the kids up for adoption, and they have potential. They can be great kids. But if people are like, hey, we weren't ready. I mean, you
Yeah.
know what you're doing. You're adults.
Well, I mean, of course they know what they're doing, but at the same time, you know, it's because we don't prepare our children. We never talk to them about it, and the consequences and all of these things, right? So I think this is where we need to have more open communication and discussions about children in general. I mean, I had my first child, alhamdulillah, when I was 22 years old. Nobody sat down with me and described how it is to have a child, and the things that you have to do as a father, and I had to learn on the go. And there's a lot of mistakes I made on my way, like having having my firstborn. And alhamdulillah, now I have my third. And I had that 10 years later, and I could see the growth within myself, right?
Mm,
How I was when I was 22 and how I was when I was 32. And now I learned a lot more. And this is why
mm.
we try educating people about having children, because, I know the struggles that I went through.
And so that communication, not just not just telling them about having the children, but getting them to communicate makes a big difference.
Of course, I mean, they have to be on the same page, right? If one person wants to do one thing and the other person wants to do the other, what's going to happen is that there's going to be constant fighting. There's going to be constant disconnect. So it's important that they have that communication with one another.
Mm, mm. No, that's important. Now, okay, now the discussion, and I actually wanted, this was one of the many topics which I was looking at, but we'll talk about it from a communications and children perspective. How religious, like like the couple, like the husband and the wife, when they're looking for each other, they should obviously talk about this. And this is something I recently noticed was a problem, was maybe the guy or maybe the girl is more religious, and the other person, because I don't know if they're desperate to get married or they just really like the person or how they look or what it is or their personality, they'll try to act as though they're just as religious as the other person.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happens is that many people, they will respond how they think the other they will respond the way they think the other person wants them to respond, or what they would like to hear.
Mm,
And this is a disservice to yourself and a disservice to the person that you're talking to, because yeah, you could fool them right now, but when you're inside a marriage, how like how long can you fool them, right?
mm,
Who you are is really going to come out, and your personality, and what your thought process is. And so then this is why I tell people you should be open and honest about what it is that you really want. Now, if the person accepts you and they're okay with it, then all right, then that's on them. But to answer it the way that you think that the other person wants you to answer is not right, because it's going to lead to a lot of problems later on inside the marriage.
mm,
And this is why, and I do think that a lot of people do this because maybe it is desperation, maybe it is because they've been burnt so many times and they really want to get married. Allah alam, what are the reasons, but you should never do this.
mm, mm. No, I get that. Like I recently dealt with it where somebody came to me, I didn't even know who they were, and they were like, we're deciding to get married. There was a lot of problems, and I was like, I spoke with them, and I was like, look, one of the problems I see, you guys are not on the same page religiously. And they were like, well, we had a conversation. I'm like, you understand when people have conversations, sometimes they'll talk up to your level or down to your level because they're looking to get married. And
Yeah,
there's something Mufti Menk said one time. He said when somebody is looking to get married, um, when they go out on a date or whatever you want to call it, when they go out, they'll put on the makeup and they'll look their best and stuff like that. He's like, that's not the person you're getting.
yeah, yeah.
So if you put on a face religiously, even, that's not the person you're getting in reality, though.
Exactly, because you're only seeing a fake perception of them, right?
Mm,
Who you're getting is when you actually live with them, and this is why the Prophet ﷺ said that you
Uh-huh.
never really know a person until you do one of two things: either you travel with them or you live with them. I mean, how many times have people been, quote unquote, boyfriend and girlfriend, and they've been together for many years, but
Yeah.
when they get married, then it it leads to
It,
a divorce
it,
within the first year.
it doesn't, it honestly doesn't even make any sense a lot of times. Is these people, they've been together for like 10, 12 years as boyfriend, girlfriend, even living together. And they're like, the day we got married, things changed. I'm like,
Well, I
I guess
mean,
it's that factor of commitment.
well,
Now you have to be committed.
yeah, I mean, now that you expect more from the person once you get married, right? You expect them to do more for you, and whether that's fair or not, that's something another discussion. Because I mean, you've already been with them for so long, you should have accepted them for who they are.
Yeah.
But that's something that does occur, and we see it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's subhanallah. It's a lot because we get to see it like on a community level. Not even talking about like a therapist or a coach or anything. On a community level, we see so many people coming in like, we want to get married. Let's get on with the show. And you're like, look, I don't think you're ready. Like, why would you say that? Do you not want us to get married? And it's like, no, I want you to get married, but I want you guys to know what the hell you guys are getting into, not just get married for the sake of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have people that come sometimes and they're really adamant about getting married, and I have to tell them, I'm like, I don't think this is right.
Yeah.
I don't think the other person is committed as much as you are committed to this relationship, and they sometimes get hurt or they get upset with me. And I mean, obviously, I don't know what's if the marriage is going to work out or not, but I could only use my best judgment and my years of experience in giving them professional advice. But they still get upset because they're so emotionally invested inside the relationship. And I always tell people is, why are you having like years long of communication with the person to the point where you're blinded by what an expert is telling you? You put these blinders on, and now all of these red flags that a third person is seeing, you can't see
Mm,
because you're so emotionally invested, and
mm,
that's because you've had all of these conversations, and now you just really want this to work out. This is why I tell people, when you're getting married, I mean, why is it that we need to talk for over a year? I
mm-hmm,
mean, look, I understand that our parents might have got an arranged marriage, right? But mm, I mean, they still lasted 25, 30 years, whatever it might be, and maybe even still married, mashallah. I'm not saying, okay, let's go the arranged marriage route. You could still talk to your spouse, but how many conversations do you really need to have? Majority of the time, the conversations either lead to, "Hey, how are you doing? I miss you," right? They'll lead to something that doesn't even have anything to do with the relationship. Now, emotional attachment is there, feelings are there. You might even do something haram with the other person. So we have to be careful, because if somebody does tell us, hey, and we do see the red flags, we should be able to cut it off. But most people aren't, because of how
no.
emotionally invested they are, and then they make a bad decision, they get married, and then they end up divorced.
Subhanallah. Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of repercussions to making a bad decision and getting, in the process of marriage. And I myself, it's not like, I don't like to say it proudly, but since talking to you, understanding these things, um, and obviously being involved a little bit more on a community basis, a lot of people come to me for marriage, and I'm like, "Are you sure you're ready?" And sometimes I'll string them along and not let them
Yeah.
get married, and then finally they'll be like, "Yeah, we don't think this is gonna work because we're not even getting along." And
Hmm.
I'm like, "This is the only way to prevent them from forcing nikah on themselves."
Yeah, I mean, so I gotta to ask you, are you taking away our business? I'm just kidding.
No, I tried it. No, I tried
I'm
it.
playing. I'm
No,
just
no, I know
joking.
you
I'm just
are, but
joking.
I try to tell them. I said, "You guys need premarital counseling," and they're like, "No, we don't." I'm like, "No, yes, you do." I was like, "You guys," and basically, it's either they won't do the premarital counseling, so I'll keep,
Yeah.
being like, "Look, you guys need to have some serious conversations and come to me and tell me these conversations are more serious than just like, sitting around like, oh yes, I want to pray 5 times a day and wake you up for tahajjud." It sounds cute, but it's
It
not
sounds
realistic.
cute. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. It sounds very cute, but I mean, how many people are actually waking up for tahajjud, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean,
I'm not to say that we shouldn't, but I'm just saying, like, we can't just give
that
answers.
shouldn't be the basis of the conversation. It sounds nice,
Yeah,
but let's be realistic. Why hold yourself accountable for other religious things as well, not just the cute will wake each other up for tahajjud. Tahajjud is great. We're not saying it isn't, but that shouldn't be the basis of the conversation.
yeah. No, I agree with you 100%.
I mean, it's just do you have a list of 25 topics to talk about before getting married?
I don't think you need to talk about 25 topics. I think that's just an overkill as well. I remember like there's a 100 questionnaire that people go through before they get married. I mean, not all of those are going to be relevant to each person. I think there's general topics that need to be discussed, right? Family, friends,
Do you have a
in-laws.
Farhan's list of 100 questions? You should.
I don't. Again, I don't think that's the best way to go about it. Asking 100 questions. I think there's again relevant questions,
Yeah, a
and you
100
have to.
relevant
No, but
questions.
no, but why
No,
again? Why 100?
no.
It
I
doesn't
know
have to
all the
be 100.
bases.
No, but
Tahajjud, Awabin, Shad.
and I think for each couple you have to tailor it. Like what I ask one couple, I'm not going to ask the other because each couple is different. You have to go with the flow of the conversation. You have to understand which points, like somebody for them, children could be a very easy topic. For some other people, that could be a
Mm.
big concern. For some people, finances is where a lot of the questions need to be geared towards. So every couple is different, and this is why I really dislike all of these, prepared
Generalized.
pitch and generalize and these questionnaires that people go through, or these programs, these whatever online that you just click and you answer, and then it prints it out and says, okay, this is what.
So
Uh,
what about one area which is a big problem? Maybe next week we'll talk about it. Not a problem in a bad way, but it becomes a problem as converts marrying born Muslims, and the converts not the born Muslim may not be a good Muslim, right? Like practicing wise,
yeah,
but they have knowledge or they have an understanding of the faith based on the years. And the convert really walks in maybe a year or two and they don't have that sort of like broad spectrum understanding. And that
yeah.
communication doesn't get done.
Yeah, I mean, look, who you marry is really going to impact your deen, right? That's why we hear the hadith, "An-nikahu nisfu din," that marriage is half a religion. If I marry somebody that's more practicing and, takes religion seriously, automatically what's going to happen is I'm probably going to do the same, right? I want to get impacted by them in a positive way.
Mm,
But if there's a spouse that really doesn't care for Islam and not really practicing, guess what? I could try maintaining it as much as I can, but what's going to happen is my kids, when I have kids, they're going to get affected. They're probably not want to go. Then I'm going to feel alone. Then I'm going to feel like forget it. I shouldn't go either, and then it's going to affect me as well. So who you marry is very important, and their deen level. So if you want to maintain a certain level of standard, then you should, have that conversation with whoever you're marrying, and make sure that you marry somebody that meets that expectations.
mm. Okay. So let's say couple gets married, they don't really have the discussion about, religiosity and things like this. They have kids. This happens. They have kids. Kids are 5, 6, right? And now
Wait,
one
I thought kids
couple,
just come from the sky.
yeah, they just come from the sky, right? The little bird drops them off. Um,
Somebody just rings the doorbell.
and somebody just rings the doorbell and drops them off. I think that's a bad idea. Um, but so they have these kids. The kids are 5 and 6 now. Sort of been raising them on autopilot. Now one of the spouses wants to take the kids for trick or treating. The other
Mm,
spouse is like, "Oh, haram! You can't do this."
yeah.
How would you address this? Like they come to you like, Farhan, we're fighting over this. My husband wants to take them trick or treating. I don't want them to go trick or treating. It's haram, and we're
Yeah.
fighting now because of this.
And look, I think, there are certain things in our deen where we just need to draw a line in the sand, right?
Okay.
Not everything needs to be like you need to fight over.
Okay.
There's certain things that it's like, okay, you know what? Maybe I disagree, but we'll still do it. Here, I do believe personally, and this is my thing, is that when it comes to trick or treating, if a spouse is saying that no, I'm not going to do it, we should adhere to that because of the religious implications of it.
Okay.
Personally speaking, now if it's becoming so bad where it's like, okay, now it's going to lead to a divorce or whatever, then I would say, all right, look, go ahead. I mean, they're probably not doing it for the religious implication or the everything religiously, um, you know, why they're doing it. So look, get them dressed, do whatever they need to do, but talk to your children about why this is wrong, right? I mean, you should not get divorced over this. I don't think it's something that should be somebody should divorce over. But when I say draw a line in the sand, it's like you should say like, hey, this is something I'm not going to be okay with, and you should try your best to making your spouse understand. See, sometimes what happens is that we fight over every little thing, so that now this just becomes another fight, right? Whereas if we, let things go, certain things go inside a marriage, and now we draw a line in the sand over something like this, then the spouse understands, oh, wow, this is serious. I'm not going to do it. So you have to pick and choose your battles, right? And something as big as, when it comes to religious implications and how it can affect your deen, then yes, you need to really stand up for that. But again, it should not come to the point where it's like, okay, now we're going to get divorced. And sometimes you might have to give in, and you could explain it to them, and try it explaining, for one, to your children why this is wrong, but number two, try explaining to your spouse in a calm manner why you don't want to do certain things, because you know how you feel about it, and try compromising in something else that you guys could do instead.
Hmm. But I mean, I guess at the core of it, at the core of the whole discussion is the lack of conversations, and somehow people get this far along, and then these things come around, and it's just like, oh, why didn't we discuss this before? How did I not know this?
Yeah, but I don't think, look, not every discussion you're going to be able to have
Yeah,
right before marriage, number one. But number two, the other thing is that not everything is that we disagree upon means that, okay, now we can't get married,
yeah,
right? um I think that there's certain things where you should have an understanding about, and you should communicate that, and um you have an understanding about. But again, we're human beings. We're going to have different thought processes. We're going to have our personalities are different. The way we look at our perceptions are different, and we have to see, okay, who aligns most closely with me, right? So I don't think there's a black and white, but I think there are certain things that it's like, okay, we should try adhering to as much as possible.
yeah.
And, but there's certain things where it's like, okay, our spouses are really getting triggered and they're becoming very aggressive about, then it's like, I hate to say like give in, but at the same time, it should not lead to, okay, us ending something just
Mm,
because.
mm. No, no, that's very true. Um, yeah, we live in an era now where people, if they get into one fight, they're like, "Oh, we don't think this is gonna work out. Let's just get divorced."
Yeah.
That's or either they keep fighting about the same thing over and over again, and they decide that this is a good idea to keep fighting about the same thing over and over again. They're like, "This is not gonna work out." Where marriage is not just one topic. Marriage is not just one night. Marriage is not just one thing. Marriage is like a lifelong experience of a wide array of things, wide array of topics. And, just have you have to support each other, help each other out, and I guess get through the journey of life together.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. It's not just one topic, right? And you have to understand that, okay, how do we navigate through these different topics together? And sometimes it is, and again, maybe when it comes to certain topics where there isn't a religious implication, right? Where it's not going to jeopardize my iman, then okay, for the sake of compromise, I'm just gonna agree to it. So that next time when there is something that's very big and that could kind of jeopardize our iman and have some religious implications, then my spouse will compromise because I've already done that, right? You can't win 100% of the battles.
Okay, so last question. A lot of people, they have fear of conflict, and this goes back to the earlier point. People will avoid communication to keep peace in the marriage. They'll avoid tough conversations that basically can prevent both partners from addressing core issues, um, which leads to unresolved grievances and gripes with each other. Um, Thoughts on that?
I mean, conflict is natural. If nobody's going to be conflict free, right? I mean, it's just how much do we let it escalate? That's the question. And we should not be scared of conflict because sometimes in conflict we grow. Couples, they learn more about each other. We learn more about our own selves. It's just your perception, and never letting the conflict escalate to a point where a person's going to utter such words that they can't take back, right?
Mm,
That's the main thing. And so when you're noticing that the conflict is getting to that point where now we can't even be in control of our own emotions, that's when I tell couples to call a timeout. Call a timeout, discuss how much time you need before you could come back and discuss that topic. But conflict isn't necessarily bad. I think it has a negative connotation that, oh, because there's conflict now we're fighting and we're at each other's throats, and all of these different things. But conflict just means that, hey, we disagree on something. So that's how I view conflict.
mm. Yeah, sometimes uh, things have to really be put through the ringer to get stronger, and obviously no one's gonna promote fighting or anything like that, but sometimes certain things require some sort of conflict to get better. But good.
Yeah. No, no, I was just saying, I mean, that you're right. Like, I know conflict, the definition, is it like a serious disagreement or argument? But I mean, it really is how you view it, right? I mean, conflict to
Did
me
you
just
have that
means,
open? That's like the actual first definition on Google.
oh. So
The
I
exact word.
was, oh yeah. So I was just saying that, I mean, that's how, because I don't want somebody to say, well, that's, you're looking at conflict as, just a disagreement or whatever, right? But I mean, again, you know, these are just, I feel like they're all, what do you call it? It's all like how you use the terminology, how you view the terminology, right?
Yeah. So inshallah, next week inshallah, if we meet up, we'll talk about cultural expectations and norms and personality quirks, because some people are introverted, some people are extroverted, and how does that play into marriages? For some people, it works out perfect. For some people, it's disastrous. And how would you suggest to balance that if one person is an introvert and the other person is an extrovert? How to balance it and make it work out? Because some people, they make it work out, and what would be suggestions from Farhan and Ahsan coaching. But Jazakallah khair for your time, Farhan.
وإياكم.
Jazakallah khair for your advice. And this is really like, what we're doing these last few weeks and these next few weeks is, if people pick and choose whichever episodes they want to watch, they can learn a lot if they're thinking about finding a spouse, or if they are in the premarital phases, so on and so forth. There's a wealth of knowledge here. Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم. All right, appreciate you.
السلام عليكم ورحمة
Alaikum
الله
assalam wa
وبركاته.
rahmatullah.